All right. Welcome to today's weekly, the very first one, ladies and gentlemen, weekly real estate talk show, and with Raul Luna. Anyways, we're going to be covering today. I got something very, very powerful that I want to be sharing. We're in a new decade, new year. Obviously in a new quarter, in a new day, and today I'm going to be sharing millionaire reflections, and these reflections are reflections that I basically highlights of questions and phrases that I've been studying and learning and applying in my life. And why is it important? It's important because oftentimes we need a mental interrupt. We need sometimes we need to hear a word or a phrase that will crack our heads open to to make things different. And while I see that a lot of people out there, they're excited for the new year, and I'm excited as well. A lot of people get excited for the 2020 and for the new decade. And it's interesting to notice that everybody waits for something else to change, but we don't reflect that in order for the year to change or for the decade to change, we got to change. I got to change. So that's why I want to share millionaire reflections, and I'm going to get started with some questions. All right, here, for every single one that is connected here with me today. All right, so. And then if there's anything, if there's room or space, we'll open it up for questions and answers towards the end. But very excited, because I remember it's, for the ones that don't know me, just by the way, I got started in real estate as a real estate investor very close to, almost 2 decades ago. And it's interesting because even though I was born in the US, I was raised in Mexico, and I came back when I was 8.5 years old. And the reason I share this is because it's important for you to know that it wasn't always easy for me. Today, yes, we get to be blessed on a lot of great opportunities, but keep in mind that my first decade, I blew up, I busted it up, I made a lot of mistakes, and yet, we managed to, to come back even in the hardest times. Okay, so very important. And throughout, obviously, all this years and all this, especially last year, which was a very massive growth year, but a lot of reflection to be done, and a lot of learning lessons to be learned. I want to go ahead and share them with you so that you can obviously open up your mind, pay attention. So come with an open heart, with an open spirit, with a humble, obviously, ability to learn, and just willing to obviously continue to grow yourself. Okay, so now, out of all these years, some of what I'm going to show you, it's because about a decade ago, I made a decision that I was going to study, the most successful organizations out there, and that I was going to study their thought process, how they thought, how they acted, how they were feeling, what is it that moved them. And it was interesting because among those people, I'm going to be naming, where is it that I learned, what I learned. And this brings me to the very first question. But before I give you the very first question, it was, an interview that that a reporter was doing with Mr. Steve Jobs when, obviously when he was alive. And the question that he was asked to Mr. Steve Jobs, the reporter asked him the question, said, what is the one thing that can kill Apple? And it was interesting because he said, very promptly, he said complacency. He says, if anything can kill Apple, it will be being complacent. And ever since, it was a moment of awakening for me, because think about it for a moment. Almost, this is not only true for Apple, it's true for everybody. So that takes me to one of the reflections that I'm going to share. But Mr. Steve Jobs also shared something very powerful. He said, almost anyone can connect the dots of the past, but it's extremely difficult or impossible to even connect the dots moving forward. And that brings me to the very first question, okay, which is, if I now you can make definitely to yourself as well, if I connected the dots of my past, where is my future going? and make sure that you answer that question. These questions were meant for you to answer. I answer them. You know, if I was to go basically my first decade in real estate, I could have answered that the future wasn't doing good whatsoever. Okay, today, because I was willing to change a decade ago, when I went bankrupt, when I lost everything, when I had to go back and literally, request for unemployment, request for, food stamps for food, literally. I mean, it was dark as you could ever imagine. But see, it's in the darkness is when you literally it's when the light actually lights up and becomes the brightest, right? So in this case, if I connect the dots of my past, okay, past year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 decade, where is my future going? But let's not go that far. Let's just grab 2019, because a lot of people get excited for 2020. But what is it that it's getting you excited? Because if you connect the dots of your 2019, in other words, if you carry the old habits of 2019 to 2020, how is your future? How is your 2020 looking? Important than getting excited about a 2020, because 2020 will only get, better, greater, massive results if we're actually connecting the dots of what happened in 2019 for you, for me, for everybody. All right. So question that needs to be answered. Question number 2, when I was a kid, what question did I actually want answered? What question did I want answered? And I can share, obviously, when I was a kid, I remember asking me questions, and whether they were quality or non-quality questions in my head was, why others have more than us. So that was one question that I wanted to get, that I wanted an answer back then. Today I know, but when I was a child, that's one of the questions. Second question is, how can I become a millionaire? How can I become a millionaire? And once again, it's a question that I wanted to get answered, but not having anybody in the family being successful, it was difficult to get answers. Especially when you're a kid, oftentimes go back to your childhood. And I'm pretty sure that as a child, you were asking a ton of questions, or you had a lot of questions that went unanswered, that today you may or may not know the answers to. But definitely for me was, how could I get millionaire? It was about, obviously, another thing was, why is it that I was born poor? Like, it was, and once again, today I see the world different, but those were questions that I made myself as a kid that I wish I would get answers back then, or that somebody could guide me at the moment, but obviously wasn't the case, okay? So write down the questions that you would want to have answered, or that you would want to have answers to, when you were a kid. Number 3, okay, third question. What do you see that needs to be done in your family, in your life, and that no one else is doing? Okay, and that no one else is doing. Keep in mind that taking the initiative, someone that takes the initiative to do what no one else is doing, okay, it's gonna get ahead much faster than anyone else. And I often share this with my organization. I said, listen, if you gotta wait for me to ask you what to do, you're too late to the game. You're already too late to the game. You shouldn't be asked. You should take the initiative. But the question says, what do I see? What is it that I'm seeing that I need, that needs to be done? Okay, that needs to be done, and that no one else is doing, that no one else is actually taking care of. So what is it? In my case, it's very interesting, because in my family, I can tell you straight out, I saw them working 7 days, 7 nights, nonstop for 7 years, at least while I was, at the age of 9 years of old, all the way to 15, 16 years of age. That's all what I remember seeing. It was just workaholics all over around myself. And guess what? No one was paying attention to create wealth, in our freedom. So that was the very first thing that I said, I got to do it. I got to tackle it, and I must get it done. So, and it was interesting because someone in your family has to be the door opener, has to be the one that opens the door, see the possibility, get it done, and you will give the absolute, you know, I should say, I was going to say permission, but no one needs permission really. Sometimes we think that we do, but you will validate the fact that if you were able to do it, they can do it as well. So, number 4, I want to go to question number 4. What costs am I willing to die? Am I willing to be hungry and foolish for? What cause is it? For me, going back to, having freedom. I had to, I had to fight for it. Otherwise, I just felt that I was just, being on a rat race and never really getting out of that race. And many people get tired. I've seen it in my own family, and I don't know about you. But I side with my grandparents. Reaching to an age where they couldn't work anymore, they got laid off, and it's sad to see them basically just in their in their second life not being needed, and it was sad to see all that stuff. And guess what? I said I have to do something. Now, nobody told me about it. That goes back to obviously question number 3. I saw it. No one was doing anything about it, so I had to do it. And that's when taking the initiative matters. You took the initiative to be connected here with me today, so congratulations. So what cause is it that I'm willing to be hungry and remain foolish for? And this is something that Steve Jobs actually, as a matter of fact, these questions were born because of that interview. To me, it was like, Steve Jobs says, remain hungry and foolish. And it's interesting because to me, it tells me, never let the hungry, never let your dreams. To me, that all it means is do not let your dreams die, and be humble, remain humble enough to continue to learn all the time, right? So very powerful, right? Now I'm going to start with the reflections. I told you that I was going to start with answers. Those questions need answers. And if you answer them, it will serve the purpose, for you to have a better 2020. If you're really here today with me, with a purpose and a humble heart of, I want to become aware of how is it that I can, become much more successful in 2020. Now, I heard it from Bob Proctor, okay? He said, you should have a goal of becoming not only millionaire, but multimillionaire, not just for the money. The money is part of it, but because of who you must become in order to achieve that level of success. And it's so true. It is, I embrace it personally because not only I believe it, but you will have to become someone greater if you want to have a greater year. You must become someone greater if you want to to have a greater year, okay? So that's one of the reflections. I want to share another reflection, and that I think it's, goes hand on hand with what we're talking. If you want a better 2020, rather than looking for a job, look for the problem that needs solving. Look for the problem that needs solving. And it is interesting because, when you look for a problem and you solve that problem, it's no longer, if you got satisfaction of solving that issue, it almost doesn't become, even though you can call it a job, but it doesn't become anymore a job. A job is, to me, the representation of a job. It's something that I'm doing that I'm not enjoying doing, that I have to do because I gotta pay bills. But the meaning that you give to things will definitely have a different level of energy in your soul. So I'll give you an example. To me, freedom was critical, was a priority, was something that was a must, so that I can basically give a better life to, my family. And I'm pretty sure that you would want to, do the same or better or greater, whatever your goal is. But understand that most people come and look for a job. Still remember many conversations in my family. being, coming from a Latino family, from a Mexican family, in the conversations that I overheard with the grown-ups, and me being a kid, was when they would ask them, hey, what is it that, what type of job do you want to get? And they will say anything. The answer was whatever it is, anything. And as a matter of fact, what they ended up getting was anything. My very first work in America was recycling bottles. After that, I went to, delivering or throwing door hangers in people's doors, and then, became a dishwasher, salad maker, and then eventually, delivery boy, pizza boy, etc. But the reason why I was doing that was because I gave the answer, whatever it is, whatever work I can get, I'm willing to do, which is fine, but be specific. It's better to be specific than just to throw anything out there, just whatever it is, right? And it's a very common answer that I hear among, our community, that basically, hey, what is it that you would like to work in? Well, anything. And see, anything is not the best answer. But anyways, it is important that rather than looking for a job, look for problems that need solving, and that may be a different meaning to you. And because there's a different meaning, it could become a very great journey and path to follow. Okay. Now, another reflection, and to me, it helped me. It helped me because one of the problems that I wanted to solve, in my immediate family was literally, the freedom of, of money not being an issue. And believe it or not, while I was completely wrong about it. I was completely wrong because I went bankrupt in 2009. But I can tell you one thing, that it is, I'm so grateful and thankful for real estate that allowed my family, my parents, to be retired basically, from this very same industry. Okay, so that's powerful. What is the problem that you need to solve? It's something that you got to be focusing out there. Okay, now number three, I should say, rather than work hard for money, rather than working hard for money, work hard to serve other people. Work hard to serve other people. And it's interesting because I didn't understood this until later on in my life. I was working hard for money when I should have been working hard to serve others. Give you an example. This webinar, there's no cost whatsoever, and I will give you, and I will share content and knowledge that has worked for me that could work for you if you apply it. We do monthly meetups every fourth Thursday in San Mateo, California, that literally, it's serving others, is giving content, giving what works, and leading by example. And guess what? The cost is what I think $15. It doesn't even pay for the room. We got to pretty much put out of pocket to pay for, for the installation and everything. But see, I didn't understood that before. Today I do. And see, rather than working hard for money, why we don't work hard to serve other people? Because when you serve other people, it's almost impossible that the universe is not going to come back and see that and say, you know what? The more you serve, the more you're going to be exposed to, and the more abundance is going to come your way. Tough to understand. I get it. When there's a scarcity mindset, it's tough. It's tough to see abundance when you're in scarcity mode. Okay. Now, this one is probably the single biggest. Okay, the single biggest. Obviously, there's many, but this is like the one that totally cracked my brain open, which is, rather than asking God for help, find ways to help God. And it's very interesting because, it reminds me and takes me to places where most of the people, this is not true for everybody, but most of the people, and I include myself, and today is different. And I'm looking to not only, I'm a spiritual being. I don't consider myself religious, and this is not about religion, but just wanted to make sure that you understand this. Most people, when they're in their darkest moments, or when things are not going their way, is when they remember themselves of asking for help to God. Is when they get closer to God, or they say, God, please help me. And it's interesting because, rather than asking God for help, find ways to, find ways that we can help them. And it's interesting because I still remember coming to, this country. Once again, even though I was born here, I was raised in Mexico and came back when I was 8 and a half. I remember, living in many different cities, one of them being San Francisco. Then we moved to Richmond, then from Richmond to Hayward to Modesto now. And, in Richmond, it wasn't a good, a good place to be in, at least where, the location where we were. And, at that moment, there were people trying to burn our house, and, they did drive-bys. And I still remember telling my father, I said, listen, I don't want to die this way. And I don't want to live this way. I'm out. That's why I moved to Hayward. But in that same period, I discovered that we were asking, I think we were asking for help. I mean, it was stamps or whatever, food stamps or whatever. I still remember that the very first time that I tried to buy my very first property was at age of 16 years of age. And my dad couldn't qualify because at the time he was asking, he was asking whatever help that you ask for the government. I doesn't pop into my head, but he couldn't qualify because he was asking for help in the government. I still remember getting a little bit pissed at him and said, Dad, I didn't came to this country to ask, what the country can do for us. I think this is the country of opportunity. And that's what I heard when I was in Mexico, and if that's true, it's what we should be making for, for the community, for, the city, for the state, for the country itself, and it's interesting because this takes me back to, once again, the reflection of, we always ask, we're always asking somebody for help. And have we thought and have we stopped for a moment and say, how can I serve and help them? And it's interesting because how do you think we started with our meetups? I started serving a friend of mine. I went to his meetups. I helped them set them up. I helped them with the registration. I helped them with, even with the audio. I helped them with, connecting the computer, and I did it because in my head is like, whoa, he's allowing me to be there, learning all this stuff. And yet, instead of being a taker, let me be a giver, right? So that's what takes me. Another reflection that I want to share with you is complacency is the #1 killer of success. Complacency is the #1 killer of success. And, if you're comfortable and you want to have a comfortable year, I don't blame you. Everybody, it's in a very different state of mind. But I can tell you one thing, that you're either growing or you're dying. And complacency tells me that people are dying. So you decide for yourself. Everybody's at a different cycle in their life. And therefore, all I can tell you is, reflections that has stricken $1 million thinking, which, hopefully does for you as well. Okay. Now, this comes from Magic Johnson. This reflection comes from Mr. Magic Johnson, which says, I didn't have poor dreams just because I was born poor. It's powerful because so interesting because it goes back into my childhood, right? Why we were born poor? And I realized really fast when I heard that for the very first time, I'm like, you know what? We probably were born poor, but that doesn't mean my dreams have to be poor. That doesn't mean that my dreams have to be the reflection of how we were born. And that was another, reflection, millionaire reflection that just kicked in and, should kick in to you too. It's like, just because you were born in such a way doesn't mean your dreams have to be that reflection, okay? So the next reflection is, if you don't dream it, if you don't feel it, if you don't, believe it, how can you be it? How can you become that? How can you become that thing of what you don't, believe, dream, or, or feel? So it's very important, when you, it's almost like you gotta constantly be imagining whatever is it that you want, but it's not only just the imagination, it's you gotta have that moment of feeling, have those moments of belief, because, you know, people believe that, or think, I should say, that just because it happened last, you know, just because last year was, you know, a great year, you know, this year is going to be even a better year. Well, you got to dream it, you got to feel it, and you got to believe it, you know, so it's very, very important. Another reflection. And the last reflection, ladies and gentlemen, the last reflection is, you know, and I learned this long time ago, well over 10 years ago, although it still sticks with me. This reflection still sticks with me because I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I had to do that change and that the change actually remained permanent. And it's the following thing is poor people have big TVs. You know, the difference from poor people's houses and rich people's houses is very, very dramatic. And and what it changes is the big TV. You know, poor people have big TV and rich people have, you know, big libraries. And this was actually said by Jim Rohn. You know, Jim Rohn said, you know, that poor people have big TVs, rich people have big libraries. And I still remember when I was, you know, when I was living, you know, with my family, and I was, you know, getting used to hearing all this negativity. Still remember, and it was from the people that loved me. You know, they didn't have bad intentions, you know, like my mom. My mom didn't have bad intentions, but she would tell me, you know, she would see obviously all the struggles that I would go by, and she would say, you know what, you know, she would say, Raul, just find a stable job, find, you know, a good job that could take care of yourself, because, you know, at the moment he saw what my dad was going through, which was, you know, a stable job, worked for, you know, a long time, but nothing was truly happening. And I immediately noticed that. I noticed that if I did not change, I wasn't going to be able to change, you know, my family's destiny. Um, and I noticed that because I saw a lot of big TVs in the family. I saw a lot of, you know, I would say, you know, games in the family. And while I was in that environment, I was in the transition of saying, you know what, I must read the books, I must attend the events, I must change that environment as much as I can. And for many years, it was literally a battle of, you know, being at home with parents, and not only with parents, but with, you know, uncles and aunts and everybody else, and hearing a lot of, you know, critical stuff, and me going to events and reading the books and things like that, that reminds me, you know, of that. The only way that really things change is when I started to, you know, do what wasn't popular to them, but when they started seeing the results, I gave them validation, ladies and gentlemen, that if this farm boy from a farm town was able to do it, they could do it as well. And today, no one in the family actually works in the food industry. I'm not saying that the food industry is bad. I'm just saying that it's a tough business. It's a tough, you know, it's a tough one to be in. And I'm just very grateful that basically they were able to see that. So, you know, hopefully what I shared, you know, to you today, that you can put it into perspective and into practice, because oftentimes we want another day, we want a new day, but the question that I ask you is, are you a new you? And a new you will always make any day a great day. So it's very important that we understand that. You know, to me, reflecting on the things that really made the biggest changes is like, how can that make, you know, how can we make it even better? And it's crucial because it's really a mindset level. It's a mindset, it's a philosophy, it's a culture that you get to develop, you know, and that you know, from time to time, we don't see the results immediately because we're so used to wanting to, you know, get microwave type of results. But all I can tell you is when you look for the microwave type of results, it will always come with some sort of not only pushback, but it'll come with some sort of negatives, you know, for a lack of a better word. So anyways, I want to pause for a moment and share with, with all of you guys here that we are going to, I want to share two things before we conclude today's webinar. One, we are having a very, and when I say this is the second time I'm promoting it, and we only got 3 spots, by the way. It's the Masters Closers Buying Acquisition private event. It's happening this Saturday all day long from 9 in the morning till 6 p.m. And all I can tell you is this much. If you want to master closing and buy more profitable deals 2020, make sure that you don't miss that event. We only got 3 spots. This is not a massive event. As a matter of fact, we hired 1, 2, 3 new people, okay, brand new acquisition specialist here in Properties 180, and I made a decision that I usually like to hire, not one, but in bulk, so that when I train them, I can train many at the same time and be effective. So I decided that I was going to train them, obviously in a private. And then, there were some people that overheard, obviously, the conversation and says, hey, Raul, can I be there? Can I shadow you? Can you open it to a few people? And we decided that I was going to open it to 10 people among my staff. So it's going to be, my staff, which were probably about, 7 or 8 people, plus new 10 outsider people that will be able to be a part of this. And it's so special to me. Let me tell you why. Because on private exclusive events, it only, you will get the real nuggets, okay? I'm telling you straight flat out. So if you're serious about buying, and so just so that you know, and I'm going to share, obviously, let me see if I can share my screen here. I'm going to share something with you, okay? I'm going to share here so that you could see exactly. Look, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a master closer buying acquisition private event for January 11th here in San Mateo. We're going to conduct it there in San Mateo, California. And this is precisely what you're going to be learning. How to become a master closer, sales and negotiation, overcoming objections from sellers, objections from agents, how to frame an offer for more acceptances, and master follow-ups. So it's a full day, massive, very massively packed of great high-level content. It is exactly the same thing that I teach my inner group. So in other words, you're going to be as if you're going to be treated as if you're part of that inner group in the company. So in other words, I'm going to be sharing a lot of what we do that it's really very private, that I've never shared in the past, but yet this is only for the ones that are willing to pay the price, not the price of the $997, because it's a complete gift. Trust me, $997, it's a pure gift. It's the price of wanting to be there. And put it into practice. It is a very hands-on, by the way, and I gotta make sure that you understand that it's extremely hands-on. What I mean by hands-on is we're gonna role play a lot, practice a lot, because oftentimes, I see that when people don't know how to, the semantics of sales and negotiation, and they don't know, how to present an offer in such a way that makes sense, or frame it, in such a way that makes sense to the seller or to the real estate agent that they're dealing with, is where I see the biggest, drawbacks, or not knowing what type of response you're going to get, because you don't even know what type of stimulus you're actually giving. So it's really just understanding that sales and negotiation plays a big important role, and I'm going to simplify it in a way that makes sense to anyone. But at the same time, I often get a lot of objections, and people don't know how to rebuttal them or how to overcome them. And we're going to be talking about those. Every objection that you've heard in the book, we're going to go through them in that event. How is it that I do it to frame offers, and many other people here in my company to frame offers? You're going to see that as well, and you're not only going to see it, but we're going to practice it, which is to me, the biggest thing. I'll give you an example. In real estate, I play a lot of board games, which I know that has allowed me to become even better. When I was flying to become a pilot, we simulated a lot before we actually went into the real planes. And guess what? In business, in sales and negotiations, in becoming a buying acquisition specialist, this is exactly the same training that I go through them, with them. This is exactly how I train them to make sure that they succeed in a position. Now, keep in mind, the people that come on board with Properties 180, they're not experienced people in this field. I'm telling you, there's people, they're construction workers, they're, what is it? Boy, I went blank. They're from construction workers to, oh boy, I went blank. Fabric. I went blank. But they're all laborers. In other words, they're not. They don't come from a profession. They don't come from, highly educated. And not because I select them that way. It's because that's, when they come and they're willing to be hungry, to remain foolish, and have a desire, to really succeed and willing to pay the price, I know that I can teach them to do great things in life. So if you believe that you're one of them, just go to levelupnow.com/training and sign up. And it would be great for me to be able to get to see you there. Not only shake hands, but at the same time, knowing that we're going to be able to learn together there. Okay. So having said that, go to levelupnowacademy.com/training. And I know, Ms. Lorraine, that you actually came on board. So congratulations. Congratulations. And it's, get to see you there. So for the rest of you, the second thing that I want to share is, remember, every fourth Thursday, we're having our meetup. And this coming, 20, I think it's, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 23rd, January 23rd, we're going to be having our meetup meeting for this month of January 2020. All right. So, last but not least, moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, the weekly webinars like the ones that I will be doing, this is the very last one that I'm going to be doing. Let me tell you why. We're going to be doing every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. I'm going to be doing Facebook Live, YouTube, and Instagram Live at the same time. And the reason being, I want to reach a bigger audience, and it's going to be a shorter version. In other words, we're going to be doing anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes, letting you know so that obviously that today it is the last day for Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and we're going to do Sundays. Part of the changes that we're going to be doing for 2020 is basically making sure that we can serve many, many more people. And the way we're going to do it is obviously opening it to, the social media world. All right. So congratulations for being here with me today. Congratulations for, investing this time. Go out there and crush it and make it happen. All right. So hopefully get to see you on Saturday and get to see you at the meetup as well. Have a phenomenal one. Thank you.